Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks on our special episode on books on tech and society. In our childhood, what made a magician's performance so fascinating was the illusion of witnessing something impossible. We knew there was a trick somewhere, yet for a brief moment, we suspended disbelief. The magic lay not in the act itself, but in the inability to comprehend how it was being done. Today, a similar sense of wonder surrounds artificial intelligence. Machines write essays, generate images, answer questions, compose music, and engage in conversations with a fluency that appears remarkable and human. What happens when societies begin to trust machines whose confidence may exceed their understanding? The challenge becomes even more complex when we consider that AI systems are trained on data produced by unequal societies. The benefits of technological expansion are often celebrated, while its human, environmental, and social costs remain hidden. At the moment, when AI is increasingly portrayed as an inevitable force of progress, it may be worth asking not only what these technologies can achieve, but also what assumptions, values, and inequalities they reproduce. To explore these questions, we have with us today Jibu Elias, whose new book, The New Digital Divide: Power, Control, and Cost of AI, has just come out, and it is his first interview. And in a provocative telltale about intelligence, power, technological myths, and the paradox of AI, this book talks a lot about the society rather than only the tech. Welcome to this episode of IGPP Expert Talks on writings and books about technology and society. Let me introduce Jibu a little about his work, what he has done. This was setting the context. Jibu Elias is a leading expert in AI policy, ethics, and global governance. His research and work focuses on the real world, social, cultural, and political impacts of artificial intelligence. In 2018, he co created India AI, which has now grown into one of the most significant government backed AI initiatives in the developing world. Currently, he leads the Responsible Computing Challenge in India at the Mozilla Foundation, working with universities to embed human centered AI principles into next generation of technologies as well as to rethink what education means in the age of AI. Thank you, Jibu.
Thank you, Manish. And this is my third IGPP expert talk. So glad to be back here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My first question to you about the book, which is not for a question, but a little more, I would say, thinking about what exactly was behind it. So every book begins with a question that refuses to leave its author. What was the question for you?
So, the largest question I keep telling everyone, I never planned to write this particular book. It happened. So, since 2021, 22, I have this habit of taking notes. I'm a big fan of Zettelkasten method, this German note taking method. So, I keep the snippets, maybe a code, maybe a report, everything. Then and I always didn't know. Okay, there might be a book, but I didn't know what that book should look like. Then I had this opportunity to speak with Saya, he's Meeta Kapoor, who actually asked me, what, there is a book, you should write it. And then at least 11 months passed after that conversation. One day I was going through some of my childhood memories, and I realized something about myself, how fascinated I was about technology. Technology used to excite me, digital technologies. And it's no longer a case right now. When I hear something new development, it just skips my mind, or it is no longer capable of generating a emotion as it used to before. So then I just wrote that the preface in the book. I mean, I have a copy here. The magic event. and I sent it to Meeta, assuming that she will still remembers. And there was his reply. I was waiting for this for so many months, and that gave me that motivation to write this book. And then we started off, once the publisher also came into the picture, Westland, we started off writing a book on generic. It was supposed to be a generic AI book. It was called a different name, which is we called Living with AI, focused heavily on ethics because that they and everybody thought that was my main strength. But as I did the research and I started writing, and as things changed, I mean, I had to change multiple aspects of the book. The process was very dynamic because things were changing in AI, something new is happening. And then it happened like this. I mean, the first chapter, after writing the first chapter, I wrote the chapter on jobs, and that's where things kind of shifted. And I realized, okay, there's a stronger message I wanted to share with everyone. And that question, like you asked, been holding me back is, I mean, you remember recently Jeff Bezos came out and said humans are using too much water. Because of
Yeah.
that, we won't be able to have super intelligence. So the question is, who are we building this technology for? If it isn't for the humans, right? If we can't have a better quality of life, why should we sacrifice something in the name of technology? Right? So that's a question. Who are we building it for, and who are holding the control?
I think that's a very interesting point. But before we delve more into it, I want to ask you: in what ways do you think the divide which you are talking about, it differs from the forms of inequality and disruption associated with earlier waves of technological change?
So earlier technological change, I mean, we have been seeing this rapid technological changes in recent years, right? We can look at from, electricity till internet, everything. There's a lot of democratization happened immediately, right? And even with electricity, like we all are in the benefit, and thankfully we don't have anybody controlling the supply, because we have multiple sources of production as well. And wind and so many things. I would rather look at this from an industrial revolution standpoint of view,
Mhm.
because that is the best comparison, I think. Because if you remember, few weeks back, there was this commencement speech in one of the colleges in university, where the speaker was saying AI is the next industrial revolution, and the students were booing.
Yep.
But there they booed because they were worried of job loss and many other things that's AI causing. But when I hear industrial revolution, it gives me a different picture because I come from a history background. I studied history and international relations. So industrial revolution for me, for someone who loves my country, is industrial revolution was a period of extraction. If you remember, the colonialization, the East India Company, the British or the Dutch, and all these imperial entities were colonizing the current global South, and that capital they got from this colonizing process only led to industrial revolution. And then that industrial revolution further led to more exploitation and colonialization. I mean, India wasn't a poor country 300, 400 years before, right? I mean, if you look, Dadabhai Navroji has written it beautifully in late 1800s, right? The drain of wealth theory, right? So that all happened because of industrial revolution, right? Our farmers were forced to cultivate indigo and cotton instead of cash crops, which led to famines, poverty, right? And then they use the same cotton and indigo to produce clothes, textile in Manchester, and then you send it back and sold it. Mahatma Ji fought against it. That was the Swadeshi movement. We everything. So for me, the same pattern is kind of appearing again, right? We are working on data annotation, right? The knowledge, everyone's, not just Indians, the knowledge from across the world is being taken. And now they're coming after our indigenous languages, indigenous culture, and then they, take into their modern factories, make it products, and then sell it to us, right? And now we are paying subscription. So there are a lot of parallels in that way. And that's why this divide is scarier, and the impact on larger aspect of society, whether it's job displacement or something like surveillance, the war, autonomous weapons, and shockingly now we have something called AI psychosis or cognitive atrophy. All those things happening as a result. So these are the elements that make me worry more about this particular divide than the ones before.
Let me come back to the book first.
Sure.
So the central argument in your book, The New Divide, is that technological systems often concentrate benefits while externalizing cost onto less powerful communities. In the age of AI, how should policymakers, technologists, researchers rethink innovation so that questions of equity, justice, and sustainability are treated as central concerns rather than afterthoughts?
So that's why I'm going back to the first question, right? The policymakers or the leaders should have this question in their head. Who is this technology for? How is it benefiting its population, right? And this is where I have a lot of disagreement about how we treat the big tech. We often give them tax exemptions, free land for data centers and huge projects, which will end up extracting resources. And the people who sacrifice the land, from whom the land will be taken from, or whom has to suffer the pollution and other environmental costs, will never be the beneficiaries of these products, right? They won't have the 2,000 rupees to buy a chat GPT subscription, or they won't have the cluster of GPUs or even a good computer hardware to run some of those technologies, right? So that's the larger question, right? Who are we benefiting? uh, One thing I believe the policymakers should look at is a larger, sustained way of doing things. So I think last year in Abu Dhabi, the UAE has a minister for AI, Sultan Olama. He was
Mhm.
telling that what UAE see AI is they want AI to improve the quality of life. Simple as that. Okay, they are not telling we want to build language models. I mean, they did build frontier models, but their larger goal is what can we use AI to improve the quality of life. And then he says everything else will comes as a result. If the quality of life is better, you will get better investment. If the quality of life is better, you will get more productivity from the people. So the same way we should define what that AI will be for us. Especially, so one thing I think in 2020, 2018, we had an idea, right? When the Niti Aayog's report came out, we were clear, AI for all. And we saw AI as this application level tool which can solve many of our decade-long challenges. Can improve access to healthcare. Look at like startups like Niramai, which works on breast cancer, non-intervene on very affordable, non-intervention breast cancer diagnostic. All these startups could have done that. Or Aqua Connect, which focuses on shrimp farmers. So we have this narrow, focused AI startups applications, which if we support on a larger scale, could improve our healthcare, which will improve people's access to this healthcare, better access, or improve farmers, which are the most underpaid, economically backward communities in India. They will get that access, right? So that's where we thought AI will help us, but down the line, the whole story has changed. It's now all about foundation models, trying to code with AI, vibe coding. I'm not saying those are bad things, but that kind of opened up another Pandora's box. Now, the question of job loss is where I see a lot of lies. The economic gain. I mean, this is why I was talking to someone that we should hold people who makes these claims accountable.
I think that is where, you have challenged several widely accepted assumptions about automation. And you are talking about 4 minutes of automation that you have put in the book. And I think that's would probably describe better. How do you like to talk about these 4 myths of AI? Like
So,
automation with how AI.
So in 20, like 5 years ago, I was privileged enough to be in many of the closed door meetings where we speak about AI, and every time I bring job, the default reaction is, we will discuss this later. So I was the only guy who used to speak about jobs, and nobody took it seriously. I mean, so coming to that, there are four myths. One, I will address two of them right now. One is that we should upskill. you should upskill, reskill. I mean, so recently I started reading these op-eds by some of the AI leaders of the country who were previously saying AI will not take jobs or AI will create more jobs. Now that tone is like AI is going to take entry level jobs, white collar jobs. But here is how to navigate it. So that's why I say there is no accountability, right? Whatever, and the same people who said AI will add trillion of dollar to economy, like I haven't seen that trillions. Like yeah, we have created a bubble across the world, but where is that economic addition? Because I have been in this space for like 10 years, so I can now look at something somebody said in 5 years ago, and now look at I can match and compare it. Right? Even I am responsible. I'm guilty for saying some of these things earlier on, but I do correct it as I learn new things. So one of my biggest contention is this reskilling and upskilling speech everybody says, and that has opened a lot of snake oil salesmen everywhere, especially in country like India where we value education and jobs. Like for a family, the education of their children is the most precious and expensive thing they will do there, where they sacrifice a lot of things. So the thing about upskilling and reskilling is everybody says, hey, if your job is gonna challenged by AI, it's your fault because you didn't upskill, you didn't reskill. So I know somebody who worked with me a long time ago, was like in his 50s, who was a brilliant copy editor, who lost his job. Now, what will I tell him? Hey brother, bhaiya, please go and reskill. Okay, then where do we start? Will he start from learning Python, R, data set, everything, or he should just learn to use AI tools? Because the first answer, if you start going learning everything, by the time, I mean, we all ages, and our cognitive ability also reduces as we go, age. He won't be able to master everything in a way where he can't compete with a freshly graduated student from a university who knows the same thing. So he doesn't have a value there. Now, on the other hand, you can say, learn about using AI tools, prompt engineering, which is another BS, everything. And by the time he comes and learn those things, it's actually replacing his job. So there is no value for him to continue that job with learning to use these models. So that is a question, right? We don't have a clear access answer to what reskilling and upskilling is. But one person who gave me a quite clear defined answer was Brad Smith of Microsoft. He said AI skilling is not about these courses. Said it's about larger digital literacy, being conscious about and improving access, and it's a larger question itself, not just as we see. So what is happening as a result is I just saw a local college in my state offering BA English with AI, right? AI incorporated BA English. And it was quite surprising. Okay. Then I realized the AI component is just prompt engineering. And which I think even now I use AI to build my own prompts, right? You ask one AI to build prompts for another, it will do that. So this kind of snake oil salesman has taken over the whole thing. There is a booming AI skilling sector. Everywhere you see AI courses with different kind of quality and certification. So that's the first myth. One I try to address. Right, there is where are you going to upskill into, right? And if you become, like they say, you learn coding, you learn for many years it was like learn coding, to survive in the world of AI. This was before Claude Code started doing its magic. Learn coding, learn Python. Everybody was teaching Python. Now what happens to those people who learn Python? So this is one myth I strongly address. Second is the creation of new jobs. So I have addressed this. I have contested this in multiple occasions with numbers. Multiple organizations. Like some numbers says around 300 million jobs will be exposed to AI, but on the other hand, you say you will create like 2.5 million new jobs. So this number doesn't mismatch. But often we report these newly created jobs, and everybody is like what are the new jobs? Prompt engineering or data annotators, or machine learning engineers. So these things are like that, right? So some of these jobs are relevant if you are very good at it, but many of those jobs are doesn't even are not even sustainable. And coming to this overall job part, data annotators, or now we have people fastening the phones to their head and folding clothes and cutting
Yeah,
vegetables. Yeah, those are the kind of jobs that's being generated in India,
I think
right?
that is, yeah, that's such a, I would say, it is sometimes it looks like, it's more dehumanizing.
Yes.
Like, why are we part of only this part of the soul?
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Again, an extractive thing, right? And these jobs are not going to exist for 10 years. Once they get enough data, once their machines are good enough, those are gone. Yeah, so that's what kind of strongly provoked me about this myths regarding job displacement.
I think this is important, and all what we have been seeing is like, there's a whole conversation about that AI systems are optimized to generate plausible responses rather than truthful ones. Does their widespread adoption risk, and I'm coming to what you were talking about jobs also, changing how societies distinguish between knowledge, persuasion, and truth? Because what you talked about, what kind of job it is bringing. So, what does this mean, especially for the global south, whose histories, language, culture is often underrepresented? And the kind of conversation, like, we just had people just putting cameras to their hair, which is more a dehumanizing job in a way. So, how do you see this situation, what it would lead to?
So, yeah, the larger thing about AI is kind of flattening the culture. I mean, if you ask, I think there was this interesting research done by Microsoft. Some of the researchers in Microsoft, like Kalika Bali and few other academicians from India, that looked into how AI generated wedding images. So if you ask it to generate an Indian wedding image, it should be from a one particular community, one particular style. When the fact that India has 100,000, 100 different kinds of wedding, and we are like rich in traditions, right? The Kurgi wedding is not same as a Tamil wedding. It won't be same as something in Odisha or from Rajasthan or Northeast, right? That's the richness of the culture. But AI has been doing is this flattening process because it only look at what is predominant in its data set. So if we keep seeing the same thing, mostly think that might be the truth. And another reason is many of our local culture, local languages, and local know-hows are not being digitized. Now I'm saying it as a good thing, right? We can try or give it to generation rather than giving it to this big tech. So that's another thing that's happening. Because of that, the AI don't have access to those things. So that creates this larger stereotypical content across these platforms as well.
But with that also comes a lot of questions which are not just around, I would say, culture or society, but also about the safety.
Hmm.
The safety as a society, as an individuals, and you have discussed the concept of red lines and kill switches as safeguards for AI. Can you please explain a little about what do these ideas mean and why developers should think about them before rather than after technology harms their kind?
So, Manish, I will ask you a rhetorical question. Imagine tomorrow the CEO of Boeing coming and saying, "We have created the fastest aircraft possible, which will take 1 hour from San Francisco to Sydney, let's say. But it has some problems. It may crack open in the midair. Its fuselage may detach from the wings, or it has a habit of finding its own route. It might now if the CEO of Boeing said that, imagine the uproar we'll have. First of all, he won't have the courage to say something ridiculous like that, even hypothetically. The government sanctions, the government regulation, and the whole thing will be serious. We are seeing a similar situation in AI. I remember a few years back, some old man used to carry a backpack. He said it should have a kill switch if AI goes wrong. I mean, this was the early days of GPT 2, 3 as well. Or now you see Dario coming and saying, Mythos did that, Mythos did that. So there's a lot of fear mongering here as a way to sell the product. That's one thing that worries me. But largely, when it comes to red lines and regulation, I think there has to be, we should draw lines, right? Uh, there's another myth is that people keep saying that regulation hampers innovation, but aviation is heavily regulated, medical research is heavily regulated, nuclear is regulated. We haven't gone back in any of this technology, right? We are many of there are many experimental projects that's been even experimenting with nuclear fission as well, right? Nuclear, yes, fusion as well. Those kind of technological changes are happening on the one side. So that's why you need red lines. I think as part of World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on AI, we worked on a proposal on that, which is available as a blog post under the leadership of Stuart Russell. He's being one of the champions of these red lines. So some of these red lines are logical, right? An AI shouldn't give you advices on how to make biochemical weapons. There are use cases of researchers using AI, whether it's available. The Stanford use a regular available language model, and not Stanford. The MIT researchers use the normally available language model, while some of the advanced researchers used an AI model used for generative chemistry, which is used to create new molecules, molecular structures, and they were able to get suggestions for sarin gas, VX, this kind of bioweapons which was used in Vietnam and in proper war-like situations. So that asks the questions: why can't we make a rule book saying that what, don't cross these lines, right? AI shouldn't go into another computer and do something. If those fundamental lines are in place, we will have a sort of break. I mean, if you go back to the foundations of many of these ideas, whether it's Isaac Asimov's books, there used to be a law of robotics, or we have a similar principles, OECD principles, all those things, but we need them return implementable law. Don't cross this line, and we are not doing that. That's a major concern in terms of regulation.
I think that brings me to my next point, which is on my mind because uh, the red lines and kill switches are still with the technology part. So, but we are governed by certain states and policy discussions. So, to what extent do you think public and policy discussions around AI are shaped by aspirational narratives promoted by technology companies? I think you have explained it enough, but how can we distinguish between genuine politics? How can we distinguish between genuine potential and technological?
So there is this feeling among policy leaders, especially bureaucrats, that if you speak against the technology, you will be perceived as an anti-innovation, anti-development guy. Especially, I come from Kerala, where we alternatively had the CPM communist-led governments, which often get this criticism as anti-tech, anti-innovation. Interestingly, they opened India's first IT park as well, but they also did a strike against computers as well. So it's a paradox. Now that actually forces me to all these policymakers and bureaucrats to always say, kind of being this pro technology, this is gonna do this is gonna do that, that kind of narrative. And it's not a simple fact that how much access the big tech has over this narrative, right? If you look at some of the circles, they always get preferential treatment, even compared to an organization like Mozilla Foundation. Mozilla, which has kept internet open for many decades, fought for open source technology. Compared to us, all these with the Googles and the Metas get preferential treatment and access, and that shapes the narrative. Only when after something goes wrong or something critical happens, the conversation about regulating it or trying to control it comes into the picture. But what is changing now is there is a larger public discontent over AI. People are not reacting well when they see AI slop videos or AI, AI generated imagery. There is a question, and people are getting aware that this is what happening. People are losing jobs. Even enterprises that's not using AI are laying off people, telling that what, we are using AI, so we don't need your service, right? So this has created a widespread conversations among normal public people, right, citizens. So that is in a way hopeful that we will be able to bring proper rail guards and safety and other systems in place. Right now we don't have that, right? It's still a wild west, and everything is open to everyone.
Yeah, I think that also kind of, makes me think on another side, like the US economy, which is kind of dominating the world economy, has had two major bubbles. The first was 1990s driven by internet, and then the next decade was the housing bubble. And a lot of people are talking about it that there are signs that we are currently in the middle of the third bubble, the AI. What do you think? What are the possibilities of collapse of this bubble, not just in technological terms, but in economic? Because the kind of money which is getting into it, it's insane.
Yes, I think the internet technology, the dot-com bubble, that was quite interesting, right? Which created many of these companies in first place. And yeah, in 2008, we had to deal with the whole subprime mortgage crisis as well. But I think, personally, I feel we are in a bubble, but we are kind of how do I say, snoozing it. The pop is being snoozed, right? That's the best example I can give, right? Like an alarm clock, because it's being building up, and of course we are seeing its side effects in many other places. The inflation, the global economy in general. But too many things are happening globally that the visible effects of this bubble is not coming to the surface. Many people are still saying that we haven't still exited the consequences of the 2008 crisis yet. We are still going through the harm. Now, if you look, SpaceX did the IPO recently as an AI company, but you see the value is dropping down right now. The fact that all these guys, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic, are rushing for an IPO means they are low on money. Right. I think OpenAI has been burning 30, $40 billion an year, and they're bringing in around 5 or 8 billion. And Anthropic does claims to be profitable, but we will only see it when we see the documentation, right? So, and that leads to a larger question. If one of these companies, if they go to one of these companies default or fail at one point, it will lead to a series of chain reaction, because uh, I don't know. I think your during your journalist days, I think you might have remember the Enron crisis we had. So what Enron did was they booked their expected profit into their current numbers, right? Let's say I made a agreement with IGPP to, let's say, host your podcast, right? Or something, or work on a research paper, and we said, okay, we will do that on 2028, and Jibu, I will give you 1,000 rupees for that. Now, and I'm like adding that probable income into my account this year. I am getting 1,000 rupees from IGPP, which hasn't happened, which will happen only after 2 years. So this led to Enron bubble, right? That's how they. Same thing is happening in AI, right? Because the companies like OpenAI, which doesn't even have the revenue of income of 10 billion or 20 billion profit, they have made huger commitments to CoreView, for data centers, for Nvidia, for chips, to Microsoft, to everyone. So it's a circular thing. There is a very scary web of these connections. It's like OpenAI making billions of dollars of commitment to CoreWeaver, the CoreWeaver making a billions of dollars commitment to Nvidia, then Nvidia selling GPUs to CoreWeave, then buying back. So it's, and Google buying GPUs from uh, OpenAI, I think, if I'm correct. So this kind of web has been created. Now, if any of the players, I mean, Corweave is one of the, how do I say, the less strong one, vulnerable one. If any of them falls, it will create a chain reaction. And that's why I think they are rushing to an IPO. Now when an IPO happens, the burden will be on the public, right? You will get second class shares where you don't have much of the voting right or anything, but you will be able to raise money. And if the values go down, it's your money, the pension
It's your
funds that will suffer. It's the pension funds, the family savings that will suffer, as we saw in 2008. So that's why and if you look, Sam has already said it. Dario is saying that if something happens, government should bail us out. Now, it made sense when the US government bailed out, US and UK government bailed out banks in 2009 and 10, because those banks then created loans, right? It created the economy moving. Banks are fundamental for the economy, right? Because if banks have don't no money, then there won't be no loans, then there won't be no economic activities. Who will give the savings money? And there are a lot of NPS to avoid that. That made sense. That's not the case with these private companies, private tech
I think
companies.
that's completely true, and I think, as you have said, that it is definitely something which is our future trading kind of things. That is one. But the business also operates on optimism. That is another part of it, and we face around it that something might happen, but if something might not happen, then definitely everyone takes money and development happens. So I definitely agree with a lot of concerns and the risk we see, but somewhere we have to look at it in a way that, oh, this could happen. That is one. And you had described three possible futures shared by AI in your book. And what are these futures, and which part do you believe that which offers more promise to a country like India?
Oh, I think the three scenarios were one where we first one where we go as we are today, which is the most uh, unoptimistic, pessimistic part. The third is where we will have a proper future where we will work together with policymakers. We ensure that the technology is ethically used, right? More open sources and things like that. So, and the third and the second is the middle one, which I believe is more regulated, the regulated model, right? So where you will implement some of the red lines or some of the global treaties can come into place, where we make sure that there is an equal playing field. And we have done this before. This is not something new altogether. Like we have, like DDT was there, right? DDT was a big. Once we realized DDT is very harmful to our environment and our living beings. Even after many years, we regulated it. We have regulated nuclear. We have regulated many harmful things in the world. Yes, we still haven't reached a consensus on environment, but those kind of things. So I that will be a pragmatic model to happen. But I wanted to see the third scenario I mentioned, which is technology as a commons. We keep saying we wanted to build a digital public infrastructure with the technology, but I would love to see technology as commons where AI will be all these technologies will be built by a different group of creators. And from optimistic standpoint of view, I don't think many of these big AI players are gonna last for a long time. It's a cyclical. We don't talk about East India Company anymore. We don't talk about Dutch East India Company anymore. So it's a cyclical process. But what will come out of it, right? Something which are more focused, more rooted, more grounded. Like for example, look at India itself. We have Bhashini. Bhashini is an incredible work
Yeah.
that's been happening, trying to bring language together. And Bhashini is working with, so many other institutions on even making low resource language corpus available. Similarly, AI for Bharat in IIT Madras was doing it. Bharat Gen is doing similar thing in IIT Bombay. So we have this kind of use cases where we can keep technology open and accessible for all. Because one larger question is, I'm rephrasing Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders recently said that if AI models or all these AI companies built these models on the larger human knowledge on the internet, you know, we should get a part of the ownership. I mean, he was telling US should get American public should get a part of
Yeah.
ownership, which I don't agree because if the goal with, I mean, that is narrow vantage point, but everyone should get access, right? Everyone should have a say. That, that's why I mentioned Aaron Schwartz in my book, right? He stood for the fact that if a research paper was published from a government grant, government funding, should be access to everyone. It shouldn't be kept under behind a paywall. So same thing, once we get an idea, and as the technology also progress, the open source AI ecosystem is making good progress. In many cases, you don't need these large systems. You can use small language models, which are becoming very crucial, very critical. So those kind of things will be interesting to see, solving small challenges, in healthcare, in fintech, and all those spaces. And that will be an interesting world, right? What if we use this technology for solving climate change? What if we can use in these technologies to improve crop yield? Right? We always wanted that world, close to utopia. I'm not saying utopia, but a world where everybody has their basic rights, the basic needs met, right? A world where a child doesn't have to cry for food, or has to cry about getting education. But my question is that what people like Bezos and Altman and all wanted, or Peter Thiel
Yeah,
wants? That's the question.
that's I would say that's a very pertinent question, which has always there been in all the, I would say, civilization societies, that for whom and what.
Yeah.
And there have been examples where people had set things right, and there have been examples where they were like, destroyed. So that is one thing which I would say we are, we just could wait on it. We can definitely act on it as a society and as individuals. But as you, as somebody who has been working in this space, particularly on its impact side and its policy side for last almost 10 years, uh, anybody who is reading your book, The New Divide today, and what do you want him to kind of remember? One of the ideas 10 years later.
Yeah, first of all, I don't want them to remember me as an anti-AI or
Yeah.
a modern day Luddite, because I use AI more than many people, right? I mean, my own experience is what shaped this book. But if one thing they wanted to remember is that we have so many phenomenal books in this space, starting from Stuart Russell's work, or Kate Crawford's Atlas of AI, which is a huge inspiration, or a lot of book, Joy Bolfami, or even recently, Karen Howe's Empire of AI, which focuses on open AI, or Virginia Dingham, who's a wonderful person. She wrote AI Paradox, and many more. But what the reason why I wrote the book, reason that compelled me that, oh, okay, I should write this book, is because nobody was looking at AI, its impact from a global lens, a global south lens. I mean, I don't like even the word global south, but let's say developing economy, or growing economy, from that lens. And I want to make that noise, because that comparison to industrial revolution, we are, how do I say, we are very much in danger of just being another colony, another data colonization gonna happen in the future, before we act on it, unless we act on it right now. So that's the one message I want to give.
I think that's such an important thing because you have studied history and definitely all the technology, whatever is developing, it is contextualized in a society which could be looked at historically. And when we see, like, from the invention of printing press, say till computers or internet or today the AI, the world seems different, but definitely the inequalities or the divide had been there, and we hope it could somehow be kind of diminished, like whatever. But let's see what happens.
Yes.
Thank you, Prithvi. Thank you so much for. I would again say the first interview you had done on book, and we are happy that this would reach larger audience. And congratulations on this book to you. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Manish. I always happy to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.